There is a place in Russia where Western sanctions have been felt since day one: shopping centers. At first, there were huge lines as people scrambled to snap up their favorite American and European brands that were leaving Russia over the war in Ukraine. This was followed by grim photos of deserted malls and closed stores as the traffic in Russian shopping centers dropped by around 30%. And I remember when IKEA was open, this section of the mall was jam-packed. Now it's all gone. Have Russian malls been fatally wounded, and are they slowly bleeding to death? I visited two shopping centers in Moscow to see how Russia's retail and consumer industry are trying to bounce back from the biggest blow in their history, and how certain Western brands are helping them by quietly sneaking back into the market.
Well, the name of the shop is Sneaker Box, but that's just a sign. Behind it, you'll find Reebok products, even though Reebok has officially pulled out of Russia.
I'll take you behind the scenes of how movie theaters and shopping centers clandestinely show sanctioned Hollywood blockbusters. Big and shiny shopping centers have always been a showcase for the growing wealth in post-Soviet Russia. Let's see what's become of them. First off, I didn't go alone, but took someone who has far greater expertise when it comes to shopping than I do, my wife. To make our survey even more detailed and objective, we visited two different malls. A fancy one, which is considered to be the second largest in Europe, and a typical mid-sized one that people, including ourselves, often use for everyday shopping. And I remember when IKEA was open, this section of the mall was jam-packed, and people would come not just for furniture and home products, but also to grab a bite at the IKEA cafe that was hugely popular. So IKEA definitely was an anchor tenant that used to bring in tons of cash and traffic into shopping centers around Moscow. Well, now it's all gone. Some of the mall's biggest sections that used to be rented by IKEA and H&M, another Swedish brand that left Russia, are still closed. All those smaller sections left vacant by some Western brands have been taken by new tenants. For instance, we discovered a new Belarusian apparel store which had a big "From Belarus with Love" sign on its front doors.
Это хороший магазин?
Прикольно, мне нравится.
Почему?
Ну, во-первых, белорусское качество, оно очень даже приемлемое, лучше Китая или лучше Турции во многих вещах.
But there were also several new shops that offer clothes of unknown origin and dubious design.
Появилось несколько магазинов, no name. Вот то, в чем 90-е занимались челночники, возили просто, закупали сумками одежду в Китае, Турции, привозили сюда, здесь торговали на рынках. Сейчас вот появились пара таких магазинчиков и в рамках торгового центра, чего раньше не было. Раньше мы привыкли все-таки бренд, мы все знаем их, мы знаем, зачем туда идти.
Well, the name of the shop translates as dump into English. Well, that's intriguing. I've never heard of it before. So let's go check it out. To my surprise, this was a second-hand store with quite an impressive collection of old books. Well, look what I found. Sex and the City in Russian. Well, that's an old book. And Carrie Bradshaw, she's so young. Time flies. Relics from the 1990s and even 1980s, I guess. Look at this suitcase. Wow. My grandpa used to have a similar one. It's Samsonite, an American luggage brand that left Russia, I guess. Samsonite didn't pack all his bags. And tons of used clothes that everyone can bring into the shop and sell for 50 rubles or 70 cents per kilo. I've never seen used clothes being sold in malls. Yeah, well, maybe in the 1990s.
Ее приносят, сдают. Мы что-то отправляем в детские дома, пансионаты, что-то сюда выставляем на продажу. То есть без пятен, без дырок, если мы видим, что вещь в продаже.
Stores that sell used items and clothes have been around even before the start of the war and Western sanctions. I guess what's new is that they're making their way into malls that used to host, well, let's say more high-end apparel stores. But times changed. The fancy mall that boasts the title of the largest shopping center in Russia and has the world's tallest cylindrical aquarium with 2,500 fish from the Red Sea seems better off. There were some closed shops, but not many, and it was quite busy for a Monday afternoon. Just like in the smaller mall we visited the other day, there were many new signs here, but as it turned out, this was just a facade.
Well, take a look at this shop right here, Sneaker Box. Doesn't ring a bell? No surprise. This brand didn't exist until recently, but now it's the new name of all Reebok shops in Russia.
Reebok has officially stopped selling its sportswear in Russia as a show of support to Ukraine. Although in reality, around 100 Reebok shops in Russia closed only for a short time and then reopened under a different name.
A pair of classic Reebok sneakers, training shoes. How much does it cost? 4,400 rubles.
It's like $45.
$45. Well, not that bad. They keep all the Reebok label tags on every item. So, okay, this T-shirt, it costs 2,000 rubles. Could have been worse.
After selling its Russian branch to a Turkish company, Reebok indeed stopped selling anything to Russia directly. Now they sell the very same training shoes and tracksuits to Turkey, which resells them in the very same Reebok stores in Russia. That allowed the British sportswear brand to leave Russia on paper, but keep its share of the lucrative market worth over $1 billion.
Это Reebok настоящий, да?
Да, это тот же Reebok. Просто у нас поставки по-другому идут. Раньше напрямую, сейчас через Турцию.
Next to the sneaker box, we found a store called JNS. That's the new name for Levi's store in Russia.
They even have Levi's labels on, so they're not really hiding this.
Look at the shop lady who talked with us. She put on a JNS name tag, but wore a Levi's sweater right under it. Even the slogan that greets every customer in the JNS store says, "It's the same." A not so subtle hint that the famous American clothing brand is still here, although it's gotten more expensive.
А сколько они стоят?
Сейчас 16 900.
16 тысяч?
Да.
Круто. Levi's же не стоил так дорого.
На 30% выросли цены из-за того, что у нас теперь юрлицо другое, и весь импорт у нас сейчас параллельно идет. Из-за этого, из-за логистики, из-за всего-всего цены выросли.
You should definitely check out a video I made a few months ago about Western brands that left but stayed in Russia. It's gained over 3 million views and sparked a heated debate in the comments section.
Well, some people argue that if a company doesn't sell its products Russia directly and work with third parties only, it's all good. Great then, it means that these companies managed to keep the Russian market, preserve the jobs of their Russian employees, and respect the sanctions. Although, I gotta say that I remember that when all these big companies said that they would leave the Russian market, everyone here thought this would mean no Western products on the shelves. But in reality, this meant something different.
Let me know where you stand on the matter. I'll just quickly note that the list of Western brands available in Russia under different names has been growing. Inditex, a Spanish fashion company that owns world-famous brands like Zara, Pull&Bear, Bershka, Oysho, was among the latest to join the club. Over 500 Russian stores that had been closed for almost a year will reopen soon with new signs on its front doors, but the same old products on the shelves. Although some of the Western brands that are coming back might face new competition.
Well, that's a new player on Russia's sportswear market, Li Ning. It's a Chinese brand created by former Chinese gymnast Li Ning.
Li Ning has been around for decades, but wasn't able to penetrate the Russian market, which was dominated by European and American sportswear companies. Now, the Chinese businessman saw new opportunities and ventured into Russian malls offering generous discounts.
Сколько это стоит?
Они 980, 4 990 будет скидка.
Это какой-то китайский, да, новый
Да,
бренд?
это китайский олимпийский бренд.
Но это китайский как в плохом смысле?
Нет.
Это хороший китайский.
Да. Это их, получается, знаменитый бренд, но они для себя прикольно уже не шьют.
There's always been this mindset in Russia and I guess around the world that Chinese products are, cheap and of low quality. And I think it's not always true. And actually, it's obvious that Chinese manufacturers have come a long way. But anyway, now that Chinese companies are taking over the Russian market when it comes to cars, appliances, and clothes, I guess Russian customers are destined to appreciate their quality.
But here's the thing. Modern-day malls are not just a bunch of shops. A lot of the foot traffic here is generated by moviegoers. But after 5 major Hollywood studios blocked their biggest films like The Batman and Avatar from being released, Russia's movie theaters found themselves on the verge of extinction.
Well, I haven't been in the movies in a while, but I heard they're showing Cameron's new Avatar, The Way of Water, in Moscow, despite the fact that the 20th Century Studios, the distributing company, has officially banned its movies in Russia. So let's see what it's like to watch sanctioned Western blockbusters in Russia in 2023.
The list of available films was quite interesting. It had older movies like Calvary with Brendan Gleeson from 2014 and Carrie with Chloe Moretz and Julianne Moore from 2013.
Heck, they've even brought Lynch's Twin Peaks back on the big screen. Look at this. Would you watch Twin Peaks at a movie theater again for just $7?
There were also a couple of new American movies like The Old Way with Nicolas Cage and Plane Crash with Gerard Butler. But all these films are owned by smaller production companies that kept quiet about the war in Ukraine and continued doing business in Russia.
But I'm confused. So I can't get tickets for Avatar at this terminal. The film is just not listed here, but I can clearly see that it's on the show schedule. So, what's going on?
So we walked up to a lady who works at the movie theater.
Он только онлайн подается.
Почему?
Это же запрещенный фильм. У нас другая кинокомпания покупает залы и транслирует аватара. Поэтому билеты только онлайн.
Я понял. Хитрость такая.
Technically, this movie theater doesn't screen anything illegal, but a company that rents out screening halls here does.
All right, let's go watch Avatar. It's about to start in a couple of minutes.
Народ говорит, что Эй выдает нам жизнь.
This isn't above board, of course, but Russian movie theaters have been faced with a hard choice. Either resort to piracy or die.
But do you know who beat Cameron's Avatar in the box office in Russia? This furry little fella, Cheburashka.
It took war in Ukraine and Western sanctions to push a Russian movie based in a popular Soviet cartoon show to the top of the local box office charts. Russia used to be Europe's largest cinema market in terms of admissions, and American movies made up about 70% of the films shown.
Well, of course, it's not all about shops and clothes. Many people, including myself, often come to shopping centers to grab a bite to eat. And if there's one single area in Russian malls that's been generating steady income, food courts.
The food courts in both shopping centers we went to were packed. This is an area where Western sanctions perhaps have the least impact. McDonald's is gone, but its Russian replacement, called Tasty and That's It, has effectively filled the gap. There was a huge line in front of it by the time I got hungry, so we went to Burger King. The American fast food giant said it simply couldn't close its 800 restaurants in Russia because its Russian franchisee had refused to do so.
Also, there is no Coke or Pepsi. The only soft drink that they have is Evervest.
And just so you know, Evervest is a brand created by PepsiCo, another American company that ceased production of its famous soft drinks in Russia. However, it's expected to renew sales of Pepsi, Mirinda, and 7-Up under the Evervest label, a lesser-known brand that isn't as associated with its parent company. But of course, thriving food courts alone can't pull Russia's shopping centers out of the otherwise difficult situation they found themselves in. The doors of Western stores like IKEA, Uniqlo, Hugo Boss, Tommy Hilfiger, and Decathlon are still shut tight. Although those that reopened have certainly helped soften the blow that the sanctions dealt out in the beginning. Whether there is a happy ending awaiting Russian malls and the Russian economy remains to be seen. But we're certainly in for a couple of more episodes of a reality show where the strong desire to punish Russia struggles with an even stronger lust to make money here.